my last year on the Outlaws, I didn't really want to be full time on the road anymore. You don't make enough while you're racing to just be like, okay, I'm done. This sport's been around a long time, a lot of old boys club. This is just an idea 365 days ago.
For 7 seasons in a row, Brad Sweet hadn't finished outside of the top 2 in a national series. And then in 2024, he created his own national series, and he won that one as well. I've spoken with Brad a few times now, including when he probably didn't want to after just losing a race. But this time, I wanted to hear what he's learned after High Limit's first full year and so much more. In this conversation, Brad touches on High Limit charters, creating the best sprint car racing product possible, what it costs to go sprint car racing, the balance he has to deal with of competing in a series that he also runs, what he actually wants to do with his time, and when he plans on retiring. Yes, of course, we talk about the huge upcoming High Limit visit to Australia, and don't worry, I made sure to ask about the potential of having more races down under and maybe even a series. This summer of Australian sprint car racing is going to be huge, and trust me, Sprint Car Hub is all you'll need. So make sure you've clicked subscribe to this channel, and depending on when you're watching this video, our new merchandise could be available right now. So make sure to check out sprintcarhub.com so you don't miss out. All right, here's my chat with Brad. What were the biggest lessons that you learned this year with High Limits?
Yeah, first off, thanks for having me on. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to learn. Obviously, going from 12 races and a midweek deal to full blown national series it just takes a lot more people, and it's a lot more logistics. Building out the schedule, getting the teams kind of aligned, and then going and executing 50 some odd nights of racing across the country. So, I mean, there's a lot learned. I think. Just good people. Like anything, any business, it takes really good people, and we have a great staff, so that mitigated a lot of of the learning curve, just because a lot of our staff has been on the road and put on a ton of races over the course of their career. So I think just the challenge, just challenges of being new. The business side, trying to sell tickets, going to areas where our brand wasn't you know known super well the first year. That stuff's challenging when you don't sell as many tickets as you want to sell, and the business side, basically, just there's a lot to learn on how it all operates. And it was a good first year, and I think we'll take some of those lessons and hopefully make some improvements for year two.
Speaking on improvements, what plans and changes do you have for year 2?
Yeah, I mean, we have some fun stuff. Just how we're gonna run our show. We kind of internally talk about the things that are free that you can do that separate yourselves from other series. And I think just being hyper focused on those details and the fan experience is something that separates High Limit from a lot of other outdoor entertainment or dirt racing series. We added some stuff for the teams, as far as a little bit more point money and a little more tow money, especially to the middle of the pack, to help some of those guys. And adjusted some of our purses and things like that. But the overall landscape of our schedules similar. We added a few more races, into Wisconsin and things like that. But just how we're going to operate our shows, and how how we're trying to professionalize the sport a little bit, with how our pit area looks, with how fans interact with our with how the fans interact with our race teams. And how we advertise a start time and an end time, so that the fans know exactly what they're going to get when they come to a High Limit race. So, just keep doing that, keep doing the fun stuff, the Durst Dice roll, and keep the fans engaged there. And then obviously our dash draw wheel is kind of fun. Allows for some different questions and a little bit of entertainment there. So, yeah, it'll be fun to release a few things that we're going to do this year, and just obviously we're young and ambitious, so if things don't work, we'll pivot and do something different.
I spoke to you in Chico and mentioned how the entire racing event started at a good time, and even the bikini contest afterwards finished at a reasonable time. And I'm like, holy crap, this whole thing's done at a good time. Everyone can be happy. And it was so cool to hear you say to me that, yeah, this is part of the whole event. The whole event needs to finish on time. Uh, do you see that as an important part of moving the sport into a new era of packaging up a whole event, and finishing on time?
Yeah, I think I like to call it classing up dirt track racing. It's when you go to any other professional or professionalizing it, but anytime you go to a professional sporting event, you know when it's going to start and you pretty much know, when it's going to end. There's always the variables of it might go into overtime or it might take a few extra minutes, but a dirt track event, you know, across the country or anywhere really, you don't know how many support classes they're going to have. They get behind early in the night, they'll go till 11 or 12 at night. The fan experience, when the fan comes and gives us a chance, I feel like if we don't do a good job, it stunts our growth. So just really being hyper focused on having more brand positive nights than brand negative nights is really important, and building events, having events where when you bring your buddy or you bring your wife, there's something to do for the kids. There's something to do for everybody. I think that's ultra important. We like to look at it like at Chico. We put on a giant party for everyone, and then a race happens. It's a giant event, and those start and end times. Like we look at the end of the night. The fan interaction, the kids meeting their drivers. That's part of the show. So that can't be too late to where that doesn't happen, because then that's basically taking a big part of the show away from your consumer. And obviously, if the kids don't have a good time, they're not going to drag their parents there. So, we gotta really professionalize the sport. We need to have a run time that's consistent, a start time that's consistent, and we need to just keep showcasing our. We have a beautiful product. It's just we just don't showcase it the right way very often, and that's something that High Limits is going to be hyper focused on for a long time.
I've done some study before doing this interview, and I love to hear you talk about how NASCAR's media rights work, Formula One. I think you talked about PBR. I feel like our sport is so stuck in a rut with complicated formats and prize money being the big promotional tool to advertise to race fans as if they're going to win that money. Um, and also, like another big part of our sport is having wealthy buddies who want to throw in some bucks to put their name on the car, and whether they get anything out of that or not. How long do you see until you feel like you can have an impact to actually shift that mindset of what the sprint car racing product is? Because what you just said there was we have a great product and we need to package it up better. And I feel like, I mean, Brad Sweet's now got an opportunity to do just that. Is there an actual timeline or plan of where you want to be at?
I mean, I think you have to, be realistic that this sport's been around a long time, and there's a lot of status quo and a lot of old boys club that's a part of running, this whole sport. So, you know, I think what we're trying to do at High Limit is when we dig our foundation to build our company and build our product. We're at the ground floor right now, so we're building it the right way. We're building it with the right people, with the right mindset, and we're showcasing what a product could look like. And over time, you have to win with the fans. Amount of time that once you win with the fans, the promoters are going to want your events, and the drivers are going to want to race in your series, because that's where the fans are going to be, and that's where the big events are going to happen. And so we're just hyper focused on the details and trying to win night in and night out with the fans. Which is basically showing them a consistently entertaining product so that they know what they're going to get with us. And that might take 3 years, it might take 10 years, but that's I kind of believe that the amount of momentum we gained in 1 year, will be on the quicker side of that, as long as we do a really good job, consistently night in and night out, and obviously even when we go to Perth, being hyper focused on the fact that we're putting that as a High Limit brand on that needs to look like one of our events. So really working with Gavin and his staff to show that. But yeah, I don't know how long it'll take. I think the fans decide that for you. It's my job to listen to the fans and adapt with our business and make sure that they're feeling like they're getting their money's worth each and every night.
Yeah, I think you're doing a good job, and I got to be honest. I think myself, like a lot of others, was pretty skeptical when this whole high limit thing came about. And spending a couple months in the USA this year, I remember it kind of clicked in my head. I'm like, I'm not at an outlaw show, but I'm at a great event. There's big crowds. It's great racing. It finishes on time. I'm like, what a again, I don't know that anyone wants the idea of the best competition necessarily split, but it was like, wow, they can be on the other side of the country and there's still this awesome event happening wherever you guys are. I want to get into just quickly on the charter situation. Justin Fiedler of Dirt Tracker had a great video just last week about how tough it's going to be to get to a point where the charters are a financially viable thing for the teams to want. And obviously, you've had a lot of teams, 16 teams, join up this year to try and join the charter situation. How long until you feel like you'll announce the final plans for charters?
Yeah, I mean, internally, I think we're discussing with our teams and putting the plan together. There is a lot of antitrust stuff that kind of a lot makes it hard to necessarily talk a ton on it just yet, just because we don't have every answer because we're working kind of amongst ourselves and some lawyers to make sure that like the language is right. And I think we're trying to make sure that as we implement a charter system, we don't want it to feel like a wall to outside teams, like they can't run with us, or local teams or teams that still want to sign up with high limit. So we're trying to find the avenues and make sure that this is good for everybody. I think the biggest concept that we wanted to push was that we want transparency, and as high limit grows, the teams are our partners and we want their value to grow with high limit, so we're kind of in it together. Obviously a charter might not be as valuable as a team owner wants in year one, but my hope is by growing together in year 3, 4, or 5, maybe we're able to find those avenues to make these charters worth a lot more for the team owners, and the goal is to obviously have the operations kind of covered by these charters, and so this becomes a more sustainable business for car owners as the sport grows, which I truly believe our product's great, like we talked about. So this is all back to the foundation, is like the foundation of us doing a good job in these first few years and having the teams buy into it.
Mm.
Hopefully down the road everybody will be paid back for the hard work and taking the risk and kind of going against the grain. And we're all maybe taking a step backwards with the hope that we go 3 steps forward. And the charter is just a commitment to our race teams that believe in our vision, that will be transparent and fair as we gain revenue. I think that's the biggest thing we wanted to let our teams know, is that if they believe in us, we'll win together, and we'll lose together if it doesn't work.
I love that you actually bring it up. I feel like it's almost taboo to be talking about, we need to make it financially viable and all that. And as a series owner, I mean, the whole concept of what you're doing is to make it profitable for teams, and the flow on effect is that there is a better product down the track. Can you at all give us a rough idea? I know every team's different, but what does it cost to go sprint car racing and do a full national schedule at the level that you do?
Yeah, I do think there's a lot of variables. Whether you have 3 full-time guys, where your shop's located, how nice of a shop do you have? How much? Are you freshening your engines 10 or 12 nights, or every 20 nights? Are you putting new tires on your cars every time? So, I think the top teams, uh, a rough guess, are probably spending. This is after they have all the things to go racing. They're probably spending around 700 to $900,000 to do it at the highest level, and then there's probably a tier under that, where you could probably do it for 5 to 700,000, and then maybe even a tier under that. Um, but you're just not going to be quite as competitive. So, with race winnings and guaranteed money, there are teams out there that are starting to show a profit as we speak. So we are getting closer. If you count the purse and you count the tow money and the point fund money, um, you know, they're in sponsorship. Like, there's race teams, that are really close to being profitable. So we just need to find those avenues to generate more media rights money, bigger purses, and there's other things that are on the horizon, in dirt track racing that could generate some more money that could be beneficial for the race teams as well.
Do you like that this is your job? I know you've chosen to take it on, but like, would you still just prefer to just be the guy driving the race car?
At times, I think yes. For instance, you get done with the season and it's been a long grind, and I was out there grinding, racing, trying to win the championship, and instead of feeling like the off season was starting, it was like then my job, every day was starting to build out next year's schedule and work with our staff on everything. But I just think y- it's kind of weird, but it's like I worked so hard to win the championships, and the sport's been so good to me. I didn't really feel like I had much to prove as far as on the driving side, and then like these opportunities just kind of presented themselves. I never envisioned myself owning a series necessarily, or competing with the World of Outlaws, or competing, like, or going against them a little bit. Like, I kind of felt like it was just an opportunity, and it was like it hit me. It was like, okay, the sport's been so good to me. I've worked so hard to win the championships. Like, here's my chance to give back to the sport. Like, I know everything about this sport. Like, I lived, eat, and breathe it. I have a racetrack. I drive the race car. I work on the business side. I've sold the sponsorships. Like, it just, and then learning about flow racing, the media rights side, and how many people are watching these races, and just all my years of being out on the road and just being like, what are we doing? What are we doing night in and night out? Like, I just felt like it was an opportunity to maybe use my experiences and just my passion to try to drive the whole sport to the next level.
Yeah, I think we've all got opinions, and not a lot of people actually do more than just talk about it. You're actually taking an actual chance at making something work. 5 outlaw championships, and now the first high limit champion. There's no signs of you being slow or not being able to get the job done. But do you feel like you're part of the racing series just to be part of the series quality? And do you feel a shift of wanting to just run the series?
It's a good question. I mean, I'd be lying if I said, like, when I was done at my last year on the Outlaws, I didn't really want to be full time on the road anymore. But you do, as a race car driver. I've seen this so many times in my career. Is like the last 5 years of a driver. It's they don't we don't make the moves to set ourselves up to just walk away from the car, and you don't make enough while you're racing to just be like, okay, I'm done at 42. I can just go home. And it's not
Yeah.
like we get F1 salaries or NASCAR salaries. So I think a lot of it is just positioning myself so that I can make that decision to be done racing whenever I decide I'm done racing. And the high limit thing is definitely a breath of fresh air for me. It's new, and I'm passionate about it, and enjoy racing at some of the different tracks, different against some of the different competition. And so that's I feel like I could do this definitely for a few more years, and still have fun with it. But you're not wrong that with the fact that, like, yeah, I do bring a lot from the drive, the my name recognition, my car, to the series. Racing it is ultra important that I'm still racing full time and competing. I think it helps recognition for our series and branding. So yeah, that's part of it. But I do genuinely love it still, and enjoyed racing for a championship this year, and not have to maybe do 90 nights. I think the 50 to 60 with a little bit of freedom. I don't think people realize how that little bit of freedom, how much more it gives you a little bit of a quality of family life, outside of racing. It's just, it was one trip to Hawaii with my family. It was, taking a weekend off in July, and it was another week. There's a little less at the beginning, a little less at the end, and it all adds up to, just a little bit more of a relaxed life and a little more time to spend with your family. But I still raced 67 times this year, but our race team spent 40 less nights in a hotel,
Wow.
uh, and honestly cost our team quite a bit of less to race this year. But that's not every team. Every team is going to do it different, with the freedom. But that's the beauty of the freedom factor, is you get to do what you want to do.
You're 38, almost 39. You'd have to think that there's a bit of a compromise on both sides, both the driving and the promotional series owner side. You touched on a little bit there, but how much longer do you think you'll want to race?
I'll race until I feel like I have the ability to either, well, for one, once I get it closer to the ability to make the decision, where I right now I have to race because obviously that's a huge part of what I earn in a year and for my family, and I am only 38, 39, which is still considered to be some of your prime years in racing. So I don't want to give up all the hard work just yet, but I think once I'm in a position where maybe I can walk away, have the financial freedom that I need to be able to make that decision, then, I could see that happening anywhere in the next 2 to 5 years. As far as maybe not being full time, just depending. But I sure would love, I'd love David Gravel to try to come over and beat me one time. So we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out in the next few years. I think there's a lot of change on the horizon in sprint car racing over here.
I'm not trying to push you either. I mean, what is it? The last 6 years you haven't lost the national championship, and before that you ran second a few times. So,
Yeah.
I think maybe until you lose one, then I think you're sweet. But let's get on to High Limit International racing in Perth. I was at Eldora in July for the announcement of High Limit coming to Perth. Um, and I asked you about the format. It's a multi-year deal. We spoke about the rules, and you said there may be a few different ones that you guys want to add, but primarily Australian sprint car rules. Can you tell us any more on those topics?
Yeah, I think the format it's getting ready to get released. It'll be very high limit type format. Probably something where we run our standard format the first couple nights, and that'll build points, and line you up kind of the final night, line up the heat races, and then those heat races will then line up preliminary features and A mains and stuff. But they're gonna announce all that. I'm letting Mike and High Limit kind of work with Gavin and making sure that everybody's happy with it when we release it. And then as far as rules, we don't really want to go against obviously all the cars in Australia are compliant with Australian rules, and we don't want to go against that. So even like my car isn't from America, so my car is here. It's compliant with Australian rules. So it'll be 100% Australian rules, Perth rules, and and then the format will be announced. But it'll be something that is similar to what we've done on our 2 and 3 day races.
Since announcing it, have you ever sort of thought, no matter how this goes or what you do as a series owner, you're like, hey, I did that. Like we went to Perth and we ran that. Does that kind of excite you? Do you get a kick out of that?
I do. I think I love coming up with big ideas and then actually being able to accomplish them. There's only so many people that seem to act on ideas, and it's fun to act on them, and then be in a situation where we're 10, 12 days away right now, and Gavin's grinning from ear to ear. The ticket sales are great. There's so much hype around it. Obviously, all the everybody's going to this beautiful place in Perth to watch the biggest, arguably the biggest, obviously the highest paying, but one of the biggest sprint car races in Australian history. So it was easy because Perth just has such a good thing going. So that was so helpful, for us to launch an idea there. But yeah, it's cool. It definitely is. It's fun to have good ideas. It's fun to understand the business side of it, and it's fun to entertain the fans, and create these moments where what I'm probably excited about is to see how high the viewership can be, because we're going to be tapping into an Australian audience who can basically pay a monthly fee. So they're going to be able to watch this race if they sign up for Flow with a monthly subscription, which also will get them Chili Bowl for. So it's going to be way cheaper for them to be able to watch this than probably any other thing they've been able to watch in Australia. And then, with the timing of everything, we're going to obviously market it to the East Coast and middle of America too, as breakfast with sprint cars. So it'll be pretty cool to see kind of these different communities tuning into little old Perth over there on the West Coast. So excited to put the event on, excited to work with Perth, and excited to to see how the Australian fans perceive a high limit event.
You sound more excited as a promoter than as a driver.
Yeah, I mean, I am excited to race in it too. Obviously, a lot of my conversations of late have been behind the scenes, so I get kind of giddy at thinking about the just the show that we're about to put on for the fans. It's just Gavin's putting a lot into it, Purse putting a lot into it. We put a lot into it with our ideas and things, so it just should look different. It'll feel different. The atmosphere should be next level, and we're just excited that we get to do that. But obviously, as a racer, once I get there and get in the car, like to be able to race, when I'm going around there, I think a main time on the final night, that's probably when it'll hit me like this is just an idea 365 days ago, and here we are. Thanks to everyone at Perth and everyone at High Limit for believing in it. Like here we are, we're doing it, and so that's a pretty cool feeling when you execute an idea like that.
I think every race night that I've gone to since your announcement, both in all across America when I was in the States and then here in Australia, and private messages, comments. I mean, I haven't seen this much hype about an event for a long time. A lot of Americans saying that they want to come over.
Yeah.
It's a big trip, obviously very expensive, but I mean, people from all over Australia, people that have never even visited WA are going to Perth
Yeah.
to be there. It's going to be huge. We were talking just off camera before we started this about how many times you've been to Australia. I think it's at least a dozen, maybe more. How do you rate the Australian competition and your chances at this event? Because you got to remember too, there's not just like I try to break up the different factors, and let's be honest. I mean, you're one of, if not the best in the world as a driver, but you're not in your own car, you're not with your own team, you're on the other side of the world. There's a track that you don't race at that often. You've got rule sets that and tires, wings, all those sort of things that aren't in your favor, and you're racing against some, I would rate, stiff competition.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it exciting is the fans don't know what to expect. There's always going to be the wild card. There's going to be the local guy that's comfortable that gets in the right position. Then there's going to be the match. The team just kind of matches up with the driver. Obviously, I had success last year, but the competition level was way different. So, I think you're going to just see great racing. I think obviously having Kyle there elevates every field. You got some of the best Americans, if not most of the best Americans. I think the probably the best one we'd be missing it would be gravel, obviously, and then everybody else I think is coming, and then if you look at the Australians, you have all the best Australians. So yeah, I think Jock Goodyear, I think Jamie Veal, I think James McFadden, I think those guys will be tough. I think Callum Williamson will be tough. I mean, I'm probably missing that, and that's the thing that always happens to me is there's always a new up and coming or two drivers that you don't know of that have been getting better in Australia that they'll be able to showcase their talent. So they'll be on a national stage, and maybe this is an opportunity for some of those guys to showcase their talent and get an opportunity presented for themselves. And obviously for us, yeah, I'm gonna go there and got nothing to lose but try to win the race.
That's so cool. I think I wrote last year after the race on the 28th of December. It was probably, I think I wanted to cry. It was the one of the best events I've ever been to. And the crazy part about that is, and I remember writing at the time, is you flew in that day with your family, had hardly any sleep, and jump in the car and never been there and go out and win. I think that was probably one of the coolest things I've ever seen. But yeah,
Yeah.
like you just mentioned, there's some stiff competition. Even the outlaw guys that are going like Geo and Carson, you know what they're capable of. Um, One thing that I wanted to touch on, and I mean, I guess I know, but I wanted you to explain it to everyone else, is why are you only racing in WA? Like, why don't you come over east or travel around more?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's definitely not because I'm against anything on the East Coast. It's more of it's a family trip for me and my wife and my daughter, and so the way that Perth lays out their schedule gives us the perfect ability to kind of be in an apartment the whole time, close to the beach. We get days off. We can travel down to Bunbury. Perth's really close there, and it's just we get to race, 8, 10 times in that amount of time. And it's kind of the amount of time I want to be over there. And so, yeah, I think you'll see me branch out. Maybe next year, or the year after, we'll make a play at going back to the classic. But our team's based out of Perth. It's just, and everything from Perth is a long way, obviously, to
Yeah.
travel. So, and it just adds a whole nother week if we were to stay for the classic. And so you just kind of busy here with everything going on, and just kind of allocate those. I mean, we're still there, I think 14, 15, maybe 16 days, so almost 3 weeks, and that's about the amount of time I can kind of be away from over here at this point.
We spoke before about how you've raced in Australia a bunch of times. How would you compare the Australian landscape in comparison to there in the USA?
I mean, obviously Australia is just uh everything is the same size, but with so many less people and way less populous through the middle of the country. So you have your regions up in Brisbane and Sydney and Victoria. Now Adelaide. Obviously, they have their track there, and then you go to Perth. So you have your regions, I mean, and everything's just kind of far away. So I think because of that, you get a lot, more of like a localized feel at each region. And then, the classic's the one event that kind of brings everyone together. Obviously, this high limit event will bring some cars over, which hasn't been typical in the past. But yeah, I mean, it's what I love about Australian sprint car racing is the passion from the fans. It feels almost bigger in Australia because there's less things maybe competing with sprint car racing. When you come to America, that it's just everything's so big and fast moving. And when you go to Australia, I think things slow down just a little bit. And it seems like the majority of Australians know what sprint car racing is, and it makes those events feel bigger. When you put on these big events, you really feel like a lot of the country's paying attention, which is really cool.
The entire setup in Perth is perfect. I mean, the management, the facility, everything makes complete sense for you to want to do this in Perth. But it's really quite early. I mean, you announced this halfway through your first year of doing the full high limit schedule. So I was like, wow, they're really attacking this quite aggressively. And with that, can you see this concept expanding within a year or two, whether it's more races or I mean, I even had instantly while I was at Eldora when you made the announcement, I had track promoters messaging me say, "Hey, can you let Brad know that we're interested as well?" Like, do you need to do this first event, or can you have a? Do you think you'll add races pretty soon?
Yeah, I think you made a couple key points there. It's like we are young, and Perth was a great place to launch it. And so I do think that we want to see how this first event goes, and we're very kind of aware of the ecosystem in Australia and don't want to go against kind of what's already there. So if we can keep adding things to help Australian sprint car racing, we're certainly interested in that, and I will have those conversations. But I think we want to have this first event and kind of see how it goes, see how the fans react, see how the promoters react, and see how obviously the racers like it. So if we can do more, we're certainly open to it. But I think we just need to be patient with the growth, and make sure that that the opportunities are right for Australian racing.
The 2025 high limit schedule, I can't help but notice that it starts in mid March and finishes just after mid October. I'm like, hey, there's a pretty good 4 month plus period there where Australian sprint car racing could really do with a national series. Have you had discussions with anyone about a national series in Australia? I know at Eldora in July, you answered some questions at the press conference talking about wanting an international series like Canada and New Zealand, and obviously here in Australia and who knows where else. But is that something that you want to do? And if so, when do you see something like that happening? And if not, why wouldn't you want to do it?
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly passionate about sprint car racing, and some of the lessons that we've learned in America is just when you are new and ambitious, you do kind of you know maybe go against some of the status quo, or against some of what's been taking place here a long time. And so if we were to do any more in Australia, we certainly wouldn't want to be battling and going against anything that's going on there. So we would want to make sure that if we were to do something, that it was beneficial for the majority of the promoters, and that the fans, and that's something the fans and the racers really wanted. And then obviously there'd be a lot of logistics behind that, of what that would look like. So I think right now, there's a lot of due diligence, uh, you know, before you can really speak on whether you could make the right decision, to have a national or an international or high limit Australia series just yet. But I think this first event will give us an idea of how things work in Australia, and obviously open some doors, and then we can make some more educated decisions as we progress here.
Well, I wouldn't be against it. It's something I've been talking about a long time is that we need a national series here, and to see your passion and all the different roles that you play within the sport. I feel like anyone I've written before on Sprint Car Hub that anyone who has a crack at this deserves, full support because it's not happening right now. We've got great drivers, great tracks, a great vibe, incredible fan base that we've starved them for. I feel like a series creates purpose, and to think that Australian sprint car racing just doesn't have that at all, and you wouldn't have the competition, I guess, if you want to call it that, of running against the series. So,
Yeah.
um,
No, I mean, it's all good points, but I think you got to make sure there's a lot of variables in Australia with Speedway Australia, and the tracks that are very spread out in their different regions. So, you have to be mindful of what a series impact would do to those weekly programs, or some of the events that are already in place. And so I think it's just being mindful of all that, and thinking through it, and obviously making the best decision that's for Australia.
yeah, no, perfect. Well, it's going to be huge in Perth. Thanks for doing it, and thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thank you. And for anyone watching, I think single day tickets, just went on, and obviously really hope the fans come out and support it. And if it goes well, obviously we can do more big events in Australia. So excited to see all the fans, and thanks for having me on, and hopefully we'll see you soon.